Welcome to Buckeyes Tomorrow Morning for Monday, July 20th. I'm your host, Tom Orr. The Ball State game in 47 days, the game against Michigan in 131 days. Sponsored today by our friends at Jeff Ruby's Columbus, proudly offering nationally acclaimed USDA prime steaks, seafood and sushi, impeccable service, live entertainment, and an attention to detail that is simply unmatched. Just go to jeffruby.com/Columbus or check out that convenient QR code on your screen to check out the menu and make a reservation today. All right, on today's show, we are continuing our countdown of the 20 most impactful players on this year's Ohio State team. Today, we're going from 20 to 16. We started this countdown at 40, so we are starting to get into the real impact players here. I'm joined by Buckeye Insider's very own impact player, Tony Gerdeman, the team insider at BuckeyeInsiders.com. Tony, next up, we're going to go to number 20 right now. And this is a guy that we have been talking about a lot recently because we keep getting told by folks who would be in a position to know that you watch this space. This is a guy who is going to play a bigger role than people think this year. That is running back Isaiah West.
Yeah, being the number two guy, which we assume he will be the number two guy. And when you label him the number two guy, you also get some like nudges like, hey, not that he's going to be starting, but he's good enough to do something like that. And he's good enough to get the ball whenever. And so when you hear stuff like that, yeah, you're going to take notice. He was good at times last year in his limited amount of time and coming off of injury. He's healthy now and will be healthy in fall camp. You would hope for his sake. And there's every reason to believe that he's going to be just fine. And I know we did an episode of the Buckeye Weekly podcast where we talked about expectations for him this year. And as I recall, you were between like 750 and 800 yards rushing for Isaiah West. And I don't think that's outrageous if he's the number two guy and he's getting 9 to 11 carries a game.
Yeah, I think that he's someone who they have just scratched the surface of what he could be during the 2025 football season. And now, if he's healthy going into this year, and all indications are that he is, I think there's going to be carries there, and he has the opportunity to really carve out a really nice role for himself. Someone else who was not entirely healthy last year, who I'm expecting to be healthy this year and have a much better season as a result, is defensive tackle Edric Houston. He is number 19 on this list.
He's a guy that could be much higher on this list if he puts it all together. Like, if we were to do this list last year, where is Caden McDonald? Is he around this range? And certainly he was much higher than that by the end of the season. So it wouldn't be unheard of for a junior tackle to just explode and be the kind of guy that is undeniably disruptive. And so, yes, injuries, the position change, like he's finally, I think, in his comfort zone. He's really in great spirits, and that's kind of who he is, though. But yeah, it wouldn't shock me if he's much higher on this list. But he's going to be part of a rotation as well. So it's also like, how much higher can you get when you're splitting time? So I like this one, and I think everybody's rooting to see that position switch and just him embracing everything finally come to fruition for the Ohio State defense.
Yeah, I think part of the question is, how does he fit together with James Smith? Because we have not talked about James Smith on this, and a spoiler alert, it is not because James Smith missed the list of 40 most impactful players. So how do they split up those reps? Because I think traditionally in the 4-down, Ohio State one-gap defensive line scheme that you've seen for years, you would say, well, those guys are going to split snaps, and so you're not going to have as much impact. I think there's a real possibility you're going to see both of those guys on the field at the same time, and they're going to line up a bunch of different ways up front this year. So that could end up with more impact coming out of both of those guys. And if they can play together, that might be the best version of the Ohio State defensive line, James Smith and Edric Houston playing together at the same time. Next up, I'm going to go with number 18, and this is linebacker Christian Alliegro. And I had a heck of a time figuring out where to put him on this list because I like Christian Alliegro a lot. I think you go back to the post-game coverage of the Wisconsin-Ohio State game last year when Christian Alliegro was playing for Wisconsin, and it was like, man, that would be a player that I bet Ohio State would love to have. And now Ohio State has him. And with Sonny Styles gone, with Arvell Reese gone, there are certainly snaps available, and it feels like he's someone who might be able to do some really interesting and creative things with the opportunity he gets this year.
Yeah, I kind of feel like if you were to like lay out who is the most likely player to start alongside Peyton Pierce at linebacker, I think for me it's going to be Christian Alliegro, because he was there all spring long. Now he and TJ Alford rotated, and we know Riley Pettyjohn wasn't out there, but also there were times when all three of TJ Alford and Christian Alliegro and Peyton Pierce were out there, or Garrett Stover was in for Peyton Pierce. Like they had three linebackers out there, and he's the guy that can be that third linebacker. He can be that second linebacker. He can play on the line. He did it at Wisconsin. Like when I wrote a linebackers spring camp preview piece at BuckeyeInsiders.com, and it's like he can do all of the things. He can play the positions that Arvell Reese played last year, but I'm careful not to say he can do what Arvell Reese did last year. We're talking two different things. He can play inside linebacker. He can play on the edge as a Sam, because he did that at Wisconsin. There's proof of concept there. And he was one of the 3 or 4 top tacklers last year. I think he led Wisconsin in sacks and tackles for loss, or was second in those categories for them last year. Tough, hard-nosed, veteran player. So I think if he's 18, look, we're looking for, there's 22 starters. If he's one of the 18 most impactful players, I think that would be a pretty good thing for Ohio State.
And number 17, another guy who is obviously certainly going to start this year, and someone who was, I think, surprisingly good last year, but really needs to take a big step forward again this year to shore up the offensive line. And that's right tackle Phillip Daniels. We talked about him as potentially a guy who might move to right guard this spring. That didn't happen. It feels like you can probably pretty confidently pencil him in at right tackle again this year. But he was way ahead of where I expected him to be last year. If he could be ahead of where every expectations are this year, that would be a very big deal for Ohio State.
Yeah, and everybody loves his physicality and the way he plays. He is tremendous to talk to. He's confident, but not cocky, but a little cocky. And it's just, he tells you how he sees it, and he doesn't apologize for it. He came to Ohio State last year fully intending to start. We were pointing at him as, and I say we, all of us were pointing, the entire media, the Buckeye fans, whatever, pointing at him as like maybe a guy that starts in 2026. But he sat Ethan Onyeonwo down on the bench, and he took over, and him and Austin Searveld obviously held the tackle spots. And this year, I think somebody posted on the message board at BuckeyeInsiders.com, like one of the draft nicks thinks that Phillip Daniels will be the top-rated guy on the Ohio State offensive line. And we'll see. Like, you love the way you love how hard he plays. Sometimes it's a little too hard, but you'll take that as long as it doesn't, cost you a drive or something like that. But yeah, I think he's a guy that maybe got a little bit too much grief last year, and I'm sure he heard some of that.
Yeah, for sure. The right side of the offensive line last year, he did not catch the most strays there. That was Tegra Chabot, the right guard from last year, and Tegra now is at Kentucky. He transferred out. But a lot of times when you saw the issues, it was, guys, stunts between the right guard and right tackle, and that did not all fall on one person or another. You would assume, and we are right now sort of projecting Austin Searveld as your right guard this year. He and Phillip Daniels on the right side of that offensive line, you have taken these sliders for physicality and nastiness and pushed them all the way to the top. That is going to be that is not going to be a finesse right side of the offensive line if those two guys are over there next to each other. So yeah, that's going to be a real potentially consequential, how much has he improved this year kind of question there. One more to do on today's show, and that is number 16. This is someone who, coming out of the portal, I think you and I were both very, very high on this player. And there were certainly some questions about Terry Moore, the transfer safety out of Duke. He had missed all of last season after suffering a knee injury in the bowl game the previous year. And he started spring a little bit slowly as they were sort of working him back into things. But, by the end of the spring, I kind of found myself looking at him and going, yeah, I think they got what they were looking for there in the portal.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting because he was somebody that during the first half of spring, Leroy Roker was with the ones ahead of him. Second half of spring, it was Terry Moore. And whether that was by plan or that was by progression, you got to see more of him. And he's a guy that was could cover a lot of ground, 4 or 5 interceptions, was all ACC type of player at Duke. And I'm thinking now, when we're talking about the 3 safeties that they have, Jalen McLean and Earl Little are probably going to be your more active disruptor types and in the box type of stuff. So then you've just got the guy at the back end that you trust implicitly. And Jalen McLean was great at that last year, kind of the Jordan Fuller, don't let anything get beyond you, make all of your tackles. And if you come up with some interceptions, great, but just be that last line of defense. And I'm thinking maybe that's kind of what he's going to be, just this calming influence back there while all of chaos is happening in front of him. He's going to be the guy that just calms everything down if something happens, to get to him.
Well, you kind of have that smart veteran guy on the back end. That is just such a valuable piece. And he is the lowest of the 3 safeties on this list. We have not talked about Earl Little or Jalen McLean yet. And, we're relatively high at this point. That was number 16 on the list. And you've got a couple other guys who I think, as you said, may draw more of the attention, may draw more of the highlight reel plays or the stat sheet plays. But I just continue to think Terry Moore is going to be a real difference maker on the back end, even if it is just the plays that you don't see the opponent make, because he's back there to just sort of, as you said, Jordan Fuller is one of those names that we throw out, and that is a name that we throw out with tremendous respect after seeing the difference that he made on the back end of that Ohio State defense, as opposed to some of the years where they haven't had that kind of guy, and you've seen what that can look like. So if you have that kind of a racer on the back end of the defense, that makes a huge difference. So something else that makes a huge difference is if you join us at BuckeyeInsiders.com. That's where you got Tony and I as the team insiders, Chuck Maletti as our recruiting insider, Ross Fulton, Michael Pettit. They are our scheme insiders, making you a smarter football fan. We have Marcus Hartman. He is our basketball insider. We've gotten incredible feedback from our members there about the amount and quality of the basketball coverage we've already had for you this summer. We're going to have much more of that coming up throughout the season. If you are an Ohio State basketball fan, you are going to want to join us there at BuckeyeInsiders.com. And if you're an Ohio State football fan, and I have a suspicion that you might be, it is a great place for you as well. We are going to have a ton of great coverage of the team, of recruiting, of X's and O's, all of that, plus a really, really fun community on the Insiders board presented by Jeff Ruby's Columbus. And speaking of Jeff Ruby's Columbus, thanks to our friends at Jeff Ruby's Columbus, the award-winning upscale steakhouse in downtown Columbus, named one of the top 50 steakhouses in America by Food Network. Just go to jeffruby.com/Columbus to check out the menu and make a reservation today. That will do it for today. Thank you guys all for joining us. Have a great day. We'll talk to you tomorrow.